Welcome to the HR Happy Hour Network, sponsored by Workhuman. Business strategy is becoming less about what you do and more about who does it. Your people are your biggest differentiator, and Workhuman's leading employee recognition platform is challenging leaders to rethink what they know about performance and what really drives value. The world's first employee recognition AI harnesses daily appreciation flowing through your organization to see who's really moving the needle, so orgs can find their next leaders, develop skills, and match talent to the projects that push humans and businesses forward. Workhuman is unlocking the next era of workplace potential, and they invite you to join the movement at workhuman.com. Workhuman, a proud supporter of the HR Happy Hour Network. Welcome back to the Outwork in America show on the HR Happy Hour Network. My name's Steve Boese. Great to be with you today. I'm with Trish Steed. Trish, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. You know what? I am ready to hunker down. I'm going to do Christmas decorations later because out here in Colorado, we have snow coming as we speak. So in just a few hours, it's going to be over the mountains and where I am. So all
It's
good though. How about
winter.
you?
Yeah, I'm well. Cold and snowy here too. And getting ready for the big end of year push. And but a lot of good stuff still to happen here on the network, including today, Trish. We'll find out from our guest, Kevin. He's Kevin Heinzelman from Workhuman. He is the Senior Vice President of Product Management. Kevin, welcome. Do you have snow where you're at? We'll start with that.
We do. That's what I was going to say. We actually have our first snowfall here. We're right outside of Boston, in Framingham, Massachusetts, and the snow is falling here. It's starting to mount up a little bit, and so it's exciting to see the first snowfall. We know that we're officially getting into the holiday season and kind of turning over from fall into winter.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, I have a serious question for you about the offices there. So for anyone who has not been to the Workhuman offices there outside of Boston, it is so beautiful, but it also has a lot of green inside, right? When you first come in, there's a tree. Was that because it's so cold there? It just hit me the other day. I thought maybe that's why they bring the green in. So it feels like you're working, amongst trees and other things all year round.
Yeah, that's
right?
so when you walk in our lobby, that's what we call our gratitude tree. And we have monitors up in the tree that are displaying all of the most recent recognition that's come through, from Workhuman's program. And so as you walk in every day, it's a great reminder of the mission that we're on and what we're doing. But yeah, all throughout our offices, there's a ton of greenery, and our teams that designed this office over a couple of years, we were moving from one just down the street, brought in a lot of greenery, and all of that greenery is real. And we are in there watering it every day and taking care of it. And it brings, there's a lot of upsides to it, in terms of, the oxygen, all the things that's bringing in, but it just brings life to the office. And even in those areas, maybe people aren't sitting, it's still, just beautifully decorated.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I never thought I'd say this because I was such a big work from home guy for years and years and years, but it's fun to go to the office sometimes, and particularly that one. And this is not the topic of our show today, like the return to work.
Return to Workhuman.
I know we've done a lot of shows about that, but it's a really engaging, vibrant space. And yeah, as you said, Kevin, you get in there, you see some of that recognition data right there, and just connects you right back to the vision and the mission and the purpose of the company, which is fantastic, and a really cool, well thought out feature, I think, of the building. Good stuff, Kevin. So maybe we'll start with, I said Senior Vice President of Product Management Workhuman. We all get what that is. Maybe let's learn a little bit more about you. Tell us your story a little bit, and then we'll get into some of the really cool things Workhuman's been doing with recognition data and AI.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. So first, thrilled to be here. So excited for this. My name is Kevin Heinzelman. As you said, I'm the head of product at Workhuman, and so I've been here for 7 years. I actually have been in a couple of different departments here and worked in been kind of all over the business, and have been heading up our product function for the past couple of years. And so underneath that is nestled in our traditional product management teams, our product design teams, our business analytics teams, as well as our data scientists and our AI team. And so, that's a team that we've had around for about a decade. that I've been working on, and we'll get into all the AI things.
Mhm.
You can't get more than 5 minutes into a podcast or any interview without
Yeah.
talking about AI. And then we partner very closely with our technology organization, our engineers and architects and principal engineers and all of that, to collaborate, to bring this product to market. And so, I spend a ton of my time thinking about the future, and working with, our CEO, Eric Mosley, on where we're going, where we think the industry is headed. And then we partner up and get deep into all the designs and the things that we're trying to do in the product, and, where we got to fix some things and where we're really excited about the future. And so not only when you walk into our office is it, full of greenery and vibrant and a good reminder of it, but we live it every day. We use recognition really frequently, and where we are fanatics about what's next and where we're going and dreaming up the future. And so that's where I spend a ton of my time here.
Mhm.
Again, I've been here for 7 years and just love it.
Thanks for sharing that, Kevin. What makes you most passionate about working there? Before we really dive in, because I know, I've worked in product before. Steve has as well, and I think that for each person, it's a little different. What specifically about working with recognition means
Yeah.
something to you?
It's a great question. If I think back to how I ended up here, I was previously at Wayfair, an e-commerce company, and
Ooh.
one of my colleagues, came over here, and I didn't know anything about it, and I started talking to her, and I started learning about it, and then we had a recognition program where I was. It was a bit different in how it worked, but what hooked me was, frankly, not to lead into the interview, but was the data and the science behind it.
Yeah.
And even 7 years ago, they were well on this journey. And when I came in and started talking to people and got to meet with, a number of the folks that were running different departments, I was, obviously so driven by the mission. Everyone wants to work at a mission-driven company. It makes you feel good about what you're doing, and there's such a great, reminder every day of who you're doing this for and why you do it, and you get to interact with the customers. That's what makes it all worth it. What hooked me early on was the science behind it,
Mhm.
in what was possible, and the fact that the more people I talk to, the more that I realize that everybody inside these four walls believe that we have the ability to change the world, as it relates to work. And to make it, a really human-centered workplace, all the things that we talk about. But yeah, I would say that science in the data and what was being generated is what really piqued my interest early on.
Yeah. I think one thing that makes you all really different, because there are other vendors that kind of dabble in the certain parts of what you're doing. But one thing that strikes me is the warmth that comes, right? It's not just about checking a box. Like, I recognize somebody on my team today. It seems so genuine. And I think that's important, because when you're an HR leader, especially if you're wanting to do something for your company, if you're trying to do it for the betterment of people, right? It's the feeling it creates um, in the end. And so that's something I think that comes through loud and clear when we meet with people from Workhuman.
Yeah, it's, we believe in outcomes, and we believe in programs that drive towards those outcomes, and ultimately, a huge part of that outcome is building great culture. But we don't believe in check the box, right?
Yeah.
It's not, that doesn't do anything for you. You may get a little bump short term out of that if you put in a check the box, type program, but the employees are going to see through that eventually, right? And the users of it, and so, we're fanatical about the user experience and what's in our products and how we talk about it and pioneer and innovate. But I often have to tell people when they're interviewing here, they'll be like, man, this just seems like the best place in the world to work. Like, everyone's so happy. And I said, well, like, it's work, right? So there's good days and there's bad
Right.
days, right? But the reality is that everybody here believes in the mission that we're on, and has dedicated, at least this portion of their career to it. And what I found is that the more you start to really understand it and the deeper you get into it, the more entrenched and kind of hooked on it you become. And it becomes something that you're seeking every day of, how can we have, the next breakthrough? Do we really understand what our customers are looking for and where the industry is headed and what's possible? And can we continue to push those bounds?
Mhm.
And so when you're having, all company meetings and all hands meetings and those kinds of things, and that's what you're talking about, it's infectious and people want to follow that. And we live it every day. It's real. And it's what I think makes it such a special place.
Absolutely.
Kevin, one of the things we wanted to talk about on this show today was this, the idea of thinking about recognition and helping our listeners consider recognition from just a thing you should do, the check the box, as you said, to understanding how it can really be a fundamental element to help understand your culture and also further the organization's business strategy and lead to those outcomes that you mentioned. And a huge part of that, I think, Kevin, is the data itself. And so HR people are swimming in data, right? And that's data and big data. That's been a theme for 10 years, right, in the HR tech space. But what in your mind makes recognition data so different and special, even if you will, compared to other forms of data that are out there? Why is it the key to unlocking some of this stuff?
Yeah, it's this incredibly untapped pool of data, and I think you're right. HR professionals have a ton of data. They're looking at it every possible which way, right? And there's so much that comes in through that. And remember, a lot of that is great data, right? And it tells us so many things about the workforce and the work that's happening around us. What makes recognition data so special? We say it's the little notes that you're passing back and forth to each other every day. If I think about the types of data that we pull in from our employees, right, whether that's survey data or performance data or other things that we do, there's often a motive behind those responses. There's either a motive or you're trying to be, a certain person, or you're trying to portray a certain image, and all of that is really good, right? There is tons of goodness in that. But the authenticity of the recognition data, that it's continuous, it's crowdsourced, it's emotionally honest, right? And because when you're giving recognition, a moment of recognition to somebody, you're doing it out of a genuine moment of thank you, right? So that could
Mhm.
be, hey, you and I partnered up and we climbed this mountain together and we achieved this great thing, and now let's celebrate it. It could also be, hey, I was in a really tough spot and you bailed me out, and you didn't know that piece of advice that you gave me or that thing that you did for me, unblocked teams of mine to continue to work. But that was huge for us. And if you hadn't taken that extra minute, that would have stalled a bunch of people for a long time. And so in those, when you start to look at that data, even a couple of sentences, there is so much verbiage in there that tells you not only, you can see from a recognition moment who's working with whom, right? Because you've got
Okay.
people in those networks being created. You have a lot of insight into the work that's being done.
Mhm.
I often talk about a lot of the functionality in our product, but we have one called approvals, which is where the manager approves the recognition to go to the person on their team. That for me is the most helpful part of my day every day. I have a large
Mhm.
team, and the amount that I learn in those moments about who's working with who and what they're doing is really powerful. But also, there's times I'll go, I didn't know that person was working on that. That could be a really good thing, or that could be hey, maybe we got a little
Hmm.
sidetracked and a bit distracted. And so, and then you power that all the way through into talking about how that person achieved the work. Right now, we've gotten into the skills world, right, and we've been able to show and are continuing to grow into 2026 the ability to detect skills. And it's not that someone says that you have the skill once and therefore you have the skill, but it's that crowdsourced, right? People are
Yeah.
voting every day on these things, and then they're liking and commenting. And when you start to read that, you start to go, oh my goodness, there's so much here. It's this gold mine of data that we knew existed, right? But we thought recognition was, like we said before, a check the box, just a culture thing. Well, it's massive for your culture, right? And if you think about getting people to write great recognition moments, well, when you receive one that is a great recognition moment versus just a good job, which is also a good recognition moment, but when you get a little bit more out of that, it's great for the person giving and receiving. It's wonderful for the culture, and it's just a waterfall of insights and data inside all of that we then parse out, through our Workhuman IQ application, to give that information back to people leaders and HRBPs and talent leaders and executives and the kind of the whole nine yards. But the like I was saying before, the more entrenched you get into that data and really understanding it, the more hooked you become on the possibilities of it,
Mhm.
right? And then you start to mine through it, and you realize that it's not just a single program; it's the programs that we have. The largest companies in the world globally, across every corner of the world. It's there, and I would say like the last piece I would say is, um, I've always said it's like this kind of net that you cast over your organization. It's impossible for any single person or even a couple of people to know what's happening everywhere, right? But recognition are all of those signals, and you're seeing all of these informal networks being built. People that maybe aren't being recognized, or are being recognized that you hadn't recognized before, that were really strong performers. Maybe they've been a bit overlooked. There's so much that pops up out of that. Quite frankly, the opportunities and possibilities with it are endless.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Every time I talk to you or go to a Workhuman event or like seeing it. Maybe talk for a moment about like visually. This is not just a dashboard. There is a dashboard, but it's beyond that. And so I remember even before it got to that point being really fascinated by thinking about holistically when I was still in HR, being able to see some of those people that are just almost like super connectors within the organization. And you do it in such a visual way. Maybe talk about how that impacts your clients, being able to see it a little differently than just a report, right? It's so much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, right? I think, the reports are good and we have plenty of reports and that's how a lot of information gets parsed. But I think when you can get people into the product and interactively surfacing up insights and things that maybe they either hadn't thought of before or didn't think were possible to find. And I think the immersive nature by which you do that throughout the product and in the interface gives people an ability to really process it and understand it and realize that it's more than, a percentage number in a cell. Right? If we zoom out and show you the entire organizational network and the different networks that are being built inside of recognition and in the product, we start to see a whole lot of things that maybe you didn't understand. Like, one of the things I always say is like, let's say you've got an e-commerce team and an operations team, right? They're going to work really closely together on, getting something in to be purchased and then getting it out to the customer. Well, if you start looking at those networks and how information and recognition is flowing back and forth, sometimes you'll find, hey, there's like a person or two that is the connector between these departments, and that may have been someone that you'd say is a good performer, but maybe wasn't maybe not the standout performer to your eyes. But we can show you that actually, if that person weren't there, you've lost all of the informal networks for how work actually gets done. And I think that's what so much of what we're of what we're bringing forth, both in the product and all of our consulting work that we do, is to show how work's actually getting done, by whom and kind of where. And so you start to see that those networks between on how work gets done. And then you start to zoom in and look at your team and start to realize who is, critically important to other departments and other business units in your company. And then, all the visualizations that go along with that help tell the story, because the data without a narrative or a story is very easy to either overlook it or to miss the story that you're trying to tell. And so that's what we kind of, are maniacally focused on, making sure that we're getting all of the goodness out of the data in a way that is digestible and transparent, obviously, that that you can understand how we got there. And then it also drives towards actions, because that's what we're ultimately trying to get towards.
Yeah, I feel like that's your secret sauce. It's the connections, right? Because I've been in that seat where, someone resigns and, maybe their manager, their partner, whoever comes to HR and it's like, well, it's not really that big of a loss. We're okay. We'll just refill it. If I had had that ability to say, well, wait a minute, these are all the connections that break when that person's leaving, it might be a much easier case to make to help someone stay, right? You can't just do a stay interview. It kind of works, but not really. But I think if you had that bit of data where you're seeing the connections, it
Yeah.
would have changed the way I worked as an HR professional for sure.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to make, right? Is once they've decided to leave, it's it's probably too late, right? And of course,
Right.
sometimes you can get people to stay, but that doesn't have a high
Yeah.
success rate. The key to us is, how do we help you intervene before that happens, right? And you can see that somebody is creating great value to the organization. That should be celebrated, right? And that should be recognized. And what you see, and I see it even here. We're a much smaller company than those that we serve, but it even happens here sometimes. You go like, and I'm seeing a lot from this person. I can look at the analyses and see I need to get involved with this person. I need to understand what they are doing, how I can help them and support them along the way, so that one, it's not so dependent on them, but also those are the kinds of people we want to, hire, retain, and keep in the company to keep pushing us forward into the next iteration of whatever it is that you're working on. So I think it's that early identification that I think is the real superpower.
Yeah. Well, it removes the bias too. It removes friendships. It removes some of the other more surface things, I think. And so the data doesn't lie, right?
That's right.
So, yeah.
One of the other things, Kevin, I think is so interesting here, and it's something that I've been interested in for a long time too, is how the recognition data can help organizations make that connection between our stated values and our mission and what's actually happening, like the execution of our strategy and ultimately our results. And recognition data is great for that. It maybe is the only data I can think of off the top of my head that can really help a leader really assess that. I'm sure you've seen that at some of your customers. Maybe you see it internally at Workhuman as well, that when the program gets established and people start to adopt it, now you're seeing things like, okay, whether it's, customer centricity, it's integrity, it's innovation, whatever the values are that the organization is leaning into, you actually get a readout of what's actually happening against those values. I'd love your thoughts on that and how recognition data particularly can help an organization in those areas.
Yeah, it's a fascinating study when you get into it, because we all work so hard, right, as senior leaders at a company to say, here are the 5 or 6 things that we believe are what, matters to the company. They're the corporate values. They're going to be on the wall and all over the place. We're going to talk about them.
Yeah.
We're going to recognize for them. And that's a great practice, because that gives you, some benchmark for what matters in the company. What you find about those things, though, is we're all human. So, we can be correct or incorrect, right? In terms of that being actually what, is happening inside of the company. What you find inside of recognition data is, what are people, how is work actually getting done? And so we can even look at those, and we do with our consulting and our AI and data scientists, and say, hey, look, let's say it's a teamwork, award reason. We actually can read the message and say, hey, 30% of the time people are recognizing for teamwork, but the other 70% of the time, it's either one of the other reasons and it was mislabeled, right? Or it's an entirely different thing. And that doesn't mean that you should have, hundreds of core values, but what you start to see is what people respect inside of the organization, what they see as, kind of other people's superpowers, and what gets work done. And because of the ability to, semantically understand inside of a recognition message, who it was and what happened, maybe how fast it happened, and why it had to happen, the impact it had, it's a real specific message. Well, then you're able to pull out and show to these corporations, hey, the values that you have are great ones. Here's what people are also recognizing for inside of your organization. You should think about, not necessarily changing those, but how do you also bring these other competencies forward that seem to really matter to the people inside your organizations? And what I found is that when we show that to people, they look at it and they go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Those are the things that we talk about informally all the time. And you come back to, kind of again, those informal networks and how work actually gets done versus how we all diagram it to look perfect on, a process on a piece of paper. It's how work actually gets done. And so by matching up all of that, you get these incredible insights to help into the next generation of whatever it is that you're trying to motivate people into leaning in on.
Well, I think it's a good point too, because your values do morph and change sometimes and become refined as a business has been in business longer and longer. And so I think, yes, it's one thing. Maybe they opened in 1970, right? And they had these values. Well, it's a different world now too. So I think it helps business leaders not be stagnant also. When you're getting that information saying, oh, we think this thing over here is really important. Um, I don't know. I like the idea of sort of everyone contributing to what is important in the company. It's not just kind of what we've been doing the last 40 years, right?
Yeah,
Helps you grow.
and
It helps you expand, maybe.
it does. And I think what it really does is puts it front and center, in front of mind. You realize that, company values and the way that things get done are not a once every 5 or 10 years exercise. We may change them every once or 10 years, or maybe in your example, 50 years. But what matters to us is how we are evolving as a company, and taking that kind of information that is front and center and kind of pushed to you to say, like, this is what we're seeing, allows you to take action rather than saying, well, we already set the values. Why would we revisit them? Well, because work's getting done in a way that, especially right now, in the way that in the pace of how change is impacting all of us at work, there's so much there. I think the other piece, just to add on to it a bit, is more than just the values. And so we also look at it through this lens of, the work you're trying to get done. So maybe like your biggest strategic initiatives. And so inside of our product, that's called topics. And you have the ability in there to go in there and set up, hey, let's say we're working on becoming a customer obsessed organization, right? We see that one a lot in the values. Well, you can set up these topics that mine through all of the recognition data that you have and bring back this, it's a whole set of reporting and interaction, but tells you, hey, so if you're looking to be customer obsessed, and let's say we're looking at the past 6 months, there's trends here of what we are seeing in terms of activity against that. Now, customer obsessed is probably one that isn't always on. You'd expect that one to be high all the time and be recognizing for that. But if you think about ones that may come in, for a year or for 18 months or maybe 3 months, where you set that up and you say, hey guys, this is the company's biggest strategic initiative or initiatives. And there's an expectation that people are working on that. So we talk about strategy and culture coming together. This is the intersection of it, where now you can look at it and say, okay, I can see that for the first 2 months, this thing took off, but now it's dropped back down. That could be a really good thing if that was a 2-month initiative and hey, we won, we close it off, or that's a really early warning sign to those people that are, running those business units and departments that, hey, people are saying they're working on this. We're not seeing a whole lot of recognition flowing from it. And when we run this on our internal programs, our customers do it. And you see the truth in that. When it starts to happen, you'd be like, what's going on here? And you uncover something and it could be the smallest little hurdle that you just need to remove and unblock, and it starts to flow again. But then you also get to see, what are the highest quality messages around that topic that are being sent, the most effusive, the ones that are the most specific and emotionally intense. Who are the people that are contributing the most to that thing? Talk about, you get done with a real big initiative. Let's say it's a year-long thing. And you look back and you kind of say, who really drove that? Everyone in the room is going to point probably to the highest person in the org chart and say, well, of course it was that person. But what I would tell you is it's rarely that person, right? And as one of those people, I know that it is the people that are inside of it every day that live and breathe the mission, that are working, really hard to push something forward. And what something like Topics does out of our product, it looks at all that data and says, here are people again that you should be thinking about, for new opportunities and whatever else is kind of in their future. But it connects all that, because again, it's those little notes that you're passing back and forth every day. So there's so much truth and authenticity in them that as you stack that all up and zoom out from it a little bit, it's an incredible set of signals to what's actually happening, the work that's actually getting done in your organization. So it's values all the way to the actual business outcomes that you're working to drive.
What are some of the most interesting business outcomes that have maybe been a surprise to you all there, or that you were hopeful that it would lead to something? Obviously, retention is an important one. We're all working toward that. But what are some of the ones that HR leaders listening to this or business leaders might not even realize ties to recognition?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, it is whatever you want it to be, right? So retention's obviously the biggest one, right? That is the foundation for kind of the ROI of a recognition program. But we've seen that get pointed in so many different directions. And so, we talk about retention, especially around new hire retention, right? So not just overall, but looking at new joiners and getting them involved. We've seen massive boosts, like 60 plus point boost in employee NPS, post recognition being set up and kind of being truly ingrained in the company. We've seen safety go up at manufacturing and in warehouses and in plants, where that was a goal of the program that we set up. It was a specific program to drive that. The one that I like a lot, because I think it's the domino effect that consumers feel is, we have a large hotel chain that adopted Workhuman and put in a recognition program, and it was all around guest satisfaction. So we actually saw out of that was guest satisfaction scores going up post the recognition being in place.
Kevin, before we let you go, we sort of hinted at the top of the show. We have to talk about AI. We're contractually obliged to talk about it a little bit. But it's important here because we've talked a lot about the power of recognition data, the value in recognition data, how rich it can be, how important the organization. But like any other kind of data, hey, the organization needs to be able to understand it, extract value out of it, interpret it, et cetera, et cetera. This data is very nuanced. It's very free form, right? It's people expressing in words, right? The impact other people have had on them and on the organization. It's not just numbers in a spreadsheet, which are pretty easy to throw into a chart, right? So I'd love for you to talk about, and AI has been going on for a long time at Workhuman, but How is AI really kind of helping organizations really unlock the value here in this recognition data through some of the things your team has done at Workhuman?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's our entire Human Intelligence 25 release, right? Which was all around the power of this data, and quite frankly, a lot of the things that came out in that Human Intelligence release was work that we had been doing with our customers for years, kind of on a more ad hoc basis, and getting deep with them and kind of studying what mattered to them and what they were looking for. And so when we zoomed out on it a bit and said, as we're marching towards this, what is it? Because we've all heard the stats out there around AI about, the percentage of AI products that will fail, right? And why does AI not work? Well, again, the reality is that you need good data, right? Which is the authentic, genuine data, human-centered data. I think that's a really key part of why we call it human intelligence. It's human data plus AI is human intelligence. And so it's really important that we're keeping the human at the center of that. So everything that we've done with AI, whether it is, machine learning models and natural language processing, all the way up to all of the different LLMs and SLMs and neural networks and things that we do inside the product, is keeping the human at the center. AI is going to surface the signal to you, and it is up to the human to decide to take action on those things. And so there's a number of places throughout our product that does this, and I think it starts, most basic at even just when you log on to our culture hub, which is our homepage, that is a personalized page to you. So if you have 70,000 people in your organization, there are 70,000 different versions of our news feed and what we call our highlight reel, which is all AI powered behind the scenes to understand who you work with, right, most closely. And there are varying levels of who you work with based off of your org chart plus all of the connections we see in recognition. And then all of that is personalized to be, the best possible messages, right? They are the most specific, the most emotive, the most intense. They have imagery. They're starting to get commented on. They're going viral. And I think, just from a program standpoint, what you end up doing there is every time you log on, you're seeing great messages and you're seeing what is valued in the culture. And so not only is that going to be great for you, right? Our goal is that, the Workhuman platform is the first thing you're logging into every day at work, because so much of your culture is happening there, right? It's to us, it's no different than a social media app where you can get in there and scroll and you're learning and you scroll and scroll and scroll. And then, we're showing you what matters in your company. As you go to then recognize others, right? Much more likely to just write an extra sentence or two.
Yeah.
Right. But as you go through that process of submitting a nomination, we have an entire advisor suite at different steps of that nomination to make sure that the award is properly calibrated, right? So for the right value, that it's inclusive. That's our inclusion advisor. And then we now have our recognition advisor, which was new with the human intelligence release, which is reading the message along with you and saying, hey, this is a great message. Every recognition is a good moment, right? But you can make it a little more impactful. You can make it a little more specific, right? And you can always send it without doing that. But what we're finding in the data as it's been released is people are writing the extra sentence or two. So message quality is significantly increasing. And as you said at the top of the show here, that's great for the receiver, right? That's great as we're going into the holiday season and gift giving. It feels great to give, a great gift. It feels great to give a great recognition moment. And then you continue to expand this just expansive kind of gold mine of data that exists inside the program. But what we don't believe in is having AI do that for you, because then you've removed the humanity and the being human centered out of it. And so, all throughout that, we start to extract things like the skills out of it and the networks people that are working on, so that then as you use our AI assistant and other tooling all throughout the product, you have the ability to go in and look, we're going through our 2026 planning right now. And, we have a bunch of things that we're building that will be released over the year next year, but we're using them internally. So, hey, we have this big initiative. Who should run this initiative? What should some of the goals be? Who am I not thinking of? It shouldn't always be the same people on that page.
Like that.
The things that come back out of it when you do that, you sit in the room and you just stare at it and go, unbelievable, right? Because two of those people are exactly who I would have said should run that. But who's that third person? And then you start to dig on who the third person is and what they've done. And you go to that person's line manager or the executive in that area. And they're like, oh, let me tell you about, Sally. Sally is doing things we couldn't have dreamed of. And it's like, well, it's a good thing because I didn't know that. Right. So what the AI in our system is doing really is bringing to talent leaders and HRBPs and people leaders the sum total of knowledge of your entire organization at your fingertips. It's impossible for anybody else to have that, right? It's not humanly possible to know everything that everyone knows in an organization, especially in the largest ones. But when you have the ability, and throughout the product, you're getting those insights as a people leader about, as you're seeing a message someone on your team got, and it says, hey, that's skill, there's a skill identified in that message. Maybe it's, empathy or creativity or innovation, right? Well, maybe that person's working on that. That's a great tie back to their performance objectives. But maybe you're also seeing that, I didn't know that person was a great public speaker. We should be giving them some more at bats at those kinds of things. So, all throughout it, there's so much in there that is signaling or, pushing up all of these signals for you to take action on. And then, the AI assistant is where you can really get in there and start to, ask it questions and help it to whether you're, looking for mentors or who should lead a project or what type of teams in our company should be involved in a project. That's where you start to get some real assistance along the way. From all that tooling. So it's really all throughout the product. It's the basis of the Human Intelligence 25 release, and there's incredibly exciting things coming in the Human Intelligence 26 release.
I'm excited because I think back to, again, just being an HR leader myself, hearing Eric back in the day sort of explaining how all of this was going to be possible. I literally went back to work and on my big whiteboard, I was trying to manually do some of these things. The concepts really do work. Like I can say that personally. Now having the actual tools in front of you every day, it's such a different way of thinking about not just work, but how you show up with your friends, with your family, right? Because a lot of what we did maybe prior to this being a focus was it was like telling people what they've done wrong and how they need to improve that. It's always a little bit of a negative spin at work, right? Or with your kids. I think this really, and I mean this, I feel like it really helps change the way you think as well. Because if you are constantly focusing and seeing positive messages, if you're the employee, right, you're seeing all of these things, even if you're having a bad day or you're not as productive today, you know that you're valuable and that you can still, I don't know, it just has a more positive spin, I think. Is that part of what you all think about, or is that just an outcome?
We think about it all the time, and it's why our mission is to make work human. It's the beauty of our name, right? Is it's right there as a reminder to us every day that, hey, there's ups and downs at work. There's good days and there's bad days, right? There are good performance reviews and there are constructive performance reviews, and you're going to go through those cycles in a career. What's important is that isn't the only thing that defines you, right? And the work along the way and how you are getting things done and the evolution of you and the evolution of the company with it, is what makes this all worth it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's the positivity. It's, quite frankly, it's honesty, right? And I think that it's so easy to say, someone slipped up and made a mistake at work, and well, they don't get it. I would disagree, right? There's a chance they don't get it, but there's also a really good chance they had that they made a mistake or they had a bad day. And we have actually a litany of information and evidence to show where they're doing really strongly. And maybe we should be pointing them more in that direction, because the key to success is having the right people in the right seats at the right time. And there's, all these strengths across the board in an organization. And we at Workhuman have been so fortunate to work with, some of the largest companies in the world, and the partnership that we have with those companies and what they share with us and their honesty with us. And, sometimes their vulnerability and telling us what they're trying to achieve and where they're struggling. We look at that as a mission and go, "Oh, we think we can solve that problem." And so, you talk back to, Eric talking maybe 10 years ago on stage at
Oh,
Workhuman
yes.
Live about some of these things.
Yeah.
And it was ahead of the curve, but we saw it because those companies are ahead of the curve, right? And so they're telling you about the problems of tomorrow. And if you can start to understand the problems of tomorrow, you can start looking into how you can help solve them. And so, it takes time. It's not overnight. And there's a whole host of trial and error along the way. But as you start to understand what people are trying to solve and how you can help them solve it, that's kind of the beauty, the beauty of the marriage of, Workhuman and the phenomenal customer base that we have, and just those partnerships that are so deep, and we can all be so honest about it, helps us get to where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing the positivity. I
Hmm.
think it's really hard to find that sometimes at work. And as HR professionals, anybody listening to this show, I think a lot of our job is very negatively focused, right? We're kind of taking care of problems. So, what a nice way to actually be approaching your leadership team, your employees with some of those really positive things as well, it'll balance out your work as well. You're not just always focused on the negative. You can turn that around and be focused on the positive. So good
Yeah,
stuff.
this has
Right.
been great conversation, Kevin. First of all, thank you for taking some time in a busy end of year rush. I know you must be feverishly trying to get to the end of the year with you and your team. So thank you for taking a little bit of time for us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was phenomenal. I love all of the shows in the network. So just, so
Yeah,
honored to be here.
awesome.
Oh, thank you.
We think I thought when Human Intelligence release came out, we get a chance to see it. We went to Workhuman Live. We got a chance to demo it, all the things. I thought it was probably the best expression of AI I saw all year long in terms of having a real impact in organizations. And I saw a lot of AI this year, right? A ton of it, right? So, and some really cool things, right? But this, to me, when you really dig into the power of recognition data and how these AI tools can help you understand it and unlock it and really gain insight and help and make people's lives better at work and make the organization more successful. I don't know where else, what other type of data and what other type of approach could do it. So that's, yeah, it's a little bit of commercial for me, but I love this. I love what you guys are doing. I can't wait for 26, Kevin. I'm excited
I know.
to see what you guys have cooking up. So maybe, maybe mid-year, so you can come back and share some of the new stuff with us.
I would love to. I'm so excited for everyone to see it. If you're not planning to come to Workhuman Live, you should, because we're going to be, unveiling a bunch of it there. And we're so excited about where it's going. I think, Steve, you said it better than I could. We're working to be AI for good. And have AI that actually drives towards something, not just AI for AI's sake. So we're super proud of the Human Intelligence release, and so excited for what's to come next.
Yeah. Great stuff. All right. We'll put some links in the show notes so you can learn more about human intelligence, connect with Workhuman, Workhuman Live, all the things. Kevin, thank you again. Great to see you. Happy extended holidays. It's 6 weeks or so of holiday season here, but thank you again. Trish, thank you. Great to see you.
You as well.
Thanks to our friends at Workhuman. Trish and I really appreciate everyone for listening. We want to remind you to go to hrhappyhour.net for all the show archives, every title on the network. And we're on YouTube now, too, which is blowing up, Trish, by the way. Our YouTube feed is blowing up. So,
Can we also just give a little bit of a plug? We have Karen, our producer, has been making collections by topic. You can just go to h3hr.com. They're completely free. It will have a certain topic like recognition. We have one out there for that. It will have everything from reports to shows like this linked, infographics, all sorts of things. And you can share them with your team as free training. So check that out for 2026.
All right. Great stuff. Kevin, thanks again. Trish, thank you. Thanks very much for listening. My name's Steve. We'll see you next time. And bye for now.